Before the path hardens, before the choice is made, stopping decision death in this high stakes trade. Welcome to the AI Momentum Podcast. My guest today is Andreas, who's the founder and CEO of Artios, a generative engine optimization agency that's doing something few people can actually guarantee. Getting B2B companies recommended by ChatGPT, Claude, and platforms that are replacing traditional search. He's the author of Data Driven SEO with Python, and he brings nearly 25 years of digital marketing experience to the table. But what makes Andreas truly unique is that he's a certified accountant turned data scientist who built his first LLM back in 2019, 3 years before the rest of the world even knew what an LLM was. Andreas, you saw the future before it was commercialized, and that required making some very high stake bets on where the momentum of the internet was heading.
It was by pure accident because when I was building, so I got into data science over a decade ago, and that led me to AI because first we were building machine learning models or learning how to do so and then build them. And then it occurred to me that AI would be the next level, so neural networks and things like that. And I didn't even know that it was called a large language model. I was just building a neural network model to automate the optimization of web pages. But it was then I saw the writing was on the wall for SEO and where AI search would be going. So it was by pure accident and out of personal intellectual curiosity on wanting to build an AI, and that's when it hit me.
We are here today to talk about decision making under pressure, focusing on specific moments where you choose a path before the rest of the market even knew the path existed. I always like to start by going back to the trigger that drove your intuition. I'd like to go to a specific moment back in 2019. You're a certified accountant and you're a data scientist, and you decided to build the LLM from scratch, right? So, yes, you didn't know what LLM was at that time. There was no pure definition, but you were building it anyway. So, take us to the room. What was the one signal you saw that convinced you to pivot your entire career and business into a future that didn't exist yet?
Well, the pivot happened later. It happened when ChatGPT was launched because we were using our LLMs to produce superior and higher performing SEO content. It just so happened that we found that by 2022, this content was really good for AI. So again, there's a lot of accents in my life, but they seem to have been quite positive because I'm learning new things and discovering new things and finding lots of benefits for businesses that I serve.
You actually termed yourself as a mad scientist in a conversation. So I wanted to ask, what was the first mad decision you made that felt, let's say, really small at that time, but has defined what Artios is today?
I think the mad decision was around 2012 when machine learning was an exciting new thing and cloud computing became a bit more commonplace. And I actually was looking to retrain as a data scientist to become to launch a data consulting business. Because I was frankly getting quite bored of SEO. I started around 2002 and I kind of felt by that point, a decade in SEO, there must be more interesting things in the world. But the funny thing is that pivot to data science gave me a newfound appreciation for search engines and what technologists would call the information retrieval problem, right? And this is what LLMs and search engines try to solve. And so with that new appreciation, knowledge, and a new way of or new perspective on search or the information retrieval problem, that actually sucked me right back into SEO and online search. So it's quite funny how I was looking to get out of it, but actually ended up becoming more passionate about it than I ever have been.
So when you saw the writing on the wall, when the 2022 AI hype hit, right? What was the loudest noise you had to really ignore to keep yourself on track?
Well, I'm still ignoring those voices, and those come from the SEO industry when they say SEO or AI is just an extension of SEO. You know, it's just SEO best practices, but applied to AI, and that simply isn't true. It's a completely different technology, and I should know, right? Because I built an LLM from scratch. But unfortunately, the SEO industry, you know, how do you know? How do you see a color that you haven't seen before? Can you visualize that? You can't see a color that you haven't seen before, right? So SEOs, I feel the same issue is with SEO. The SEO industry is that they can't possibly imagine how GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, or AI search optimization is different from SEO or how AI is different, because they've never built an LLM from scratch. So they have no idea really what they're talking about. They don't understand the insanely high threshold of information gain, i.e., content that adds value to AI, is much higher than it is for search engines. And you know, I mean, I could probably talk a lot longer about why it's different, but yes, those are the voices I'm ignoring. So
Can you give us a couple of examples of the whys?
yeah, absolutely. So optimizing for AI is different to search engines. First of all, a lot of the content that succeeded in SEO was based on desk-based research. All you had to do was look at your target keyword, look at the top 10, take all the best sections from the top 10, make yours that little bit better, throw a few backlinks to it, and then you'd be in the top 10, right? And this is even for highly competitive industries, it would work. Um, you can't get away with that in AI. You need a lot more than desk-based research. You have to be creating content that tells the world something new. You have to be creating scaled insights, because why, as a business, should AI prefer your business and change the status quo to prefer or recommend your business if you're adding no value to the AI model, right? This is the difference. Whereas a lot of SEO content adds no real value to the internet, yet with a few tricks, you can game the search engines. You can't do that so easily with AI.
So what were the assumptions about search that you and your team were making that you realized were invisible, but you realized it much later?
Yeah, that's a really good question actually, because one of the things I found that would double e-commerce revenue, across clients in a very short time, like in 6 to 9 months, would be to, rather than do keyword research according to best practice, because keyword research tools, even first-party data analytics such as Google Search Console, they have a bias, right? They tell you what people are thinking when they're searching, but we were more interested in what people were thinking when they're buying. So we would look at the overall analytics for any given client website, and that would give us a proxy for what the market is thinking, right? Even though it's biased to the client, but at least it's not biased to the search channel. And that helped us identify the gaps. Now, it's very subtle, right? And then fast forward like 10 years later in the AI LLM age, we're seeing that actually the flaw with SEO, or taking the SEO mindset with GEO or AI search optimization, is that again, they're using keyword tools such as SEMrush and other tools like that. And again, it's very keyword driven. But what we found that if you go people driven, just like we did with e-commerce SEO, you actually get a much more accurate map of the type of topics your prospective buyers want to read and consume, rather than go with these search biased data sources.
Interesting. So it was a very data driven approach. Is there any specific area where your team, or let's say your clients as well, would disagree with your data driven approach when at that time the rest of the world was chasing chat GPTs and your clients were like, what are you doing, Andreas?
Well, well, that's a very good point actually, because I always say that if you're succeeding if you're producing content that succeeds for AI search, you're absolutely going to crush uh, SEO, simply because the content value required for AI is far higher than it is for search engines. So um, I wouldn't say we were questioned as such for pivoting. I would say it was more from business peers saying, oh, there's a lot of panic. There's no need to they would see my pivot towards GEO or AI as perhaps it's a bit premature, and these things will even out. But as we've seen, the new normal is search impressions, not search traffic. I think SEO traffic or search traffic from search engines, that's gone. Even Google is killing it by taking over 60% with AI overviews and sponsored results. That leaves very little left for organic results in the search engines, which is why as much as 80% of search engine traffic is missing compared to what it was before. So we definitely have a new normal now.
Looking back at your early AI builds, what were the main challenges that you faced specific to, let's say, the structure of the company, or in a way that would probably become a constraint and make it difficult to navigate through?
I mean, we've been collecting data on the internet of what people think for the last 6 years. So we've had to improve the scalability of that, because there's just tons of data every day. And then we added audience enrichment. So we're still facing that challenge now. We're experimenting with new data sources because we want to get a really good map of what people think. And it's that kind of data that produces research grade reports that AI likes, because it's teaching AI new things. So these engineering challenges, they haven't gone away. They keep coming.
In your work with clients right now, what's the one speed based decision that you make regarding visibility that may or may not turn into constraints, and how you push through?
So when we work with clients, what we want to know are who your target buyer is, what it is you're trying to sell, and then in what language, what target region, i.e. country. And we always lead with the target buyer, because that's what our platform is based on. It's all about, what do your prospects care about, and then in terms of what you're selling, how we relate that is we look at all of their opinions, we categorize them into topics, and then we select the topic that best matches or relates to what it is you're selling. That way we can bridge that gap between what your buyers care about and how your product or service becomes relevant. And that's really essential to make that linkage, so that you get cited, and then when you get cited, we then get you recommended, because to be AI recommended, first you must be trusted and therefore cited as an information resource.
So, I speak to founders like pretty much on a weekly basis or multiple times in a week. And a lot of founders actually often assume that SEO is just topics to manage. So, how should they re-see it as a moment of trust between the AI and the user?
Although AI has come along and it's far more advanced as a information retrieval solution or technology, SEO hasn't completely gone out of the window. You still need to make your content accessible and discoverable and extractable in terms of what's in the content, right? So you still need to do that, and you still need to demonstrate to search technology like AI that, like a book, you have many chapters, and you have you know a lot about the subject on the things that are related to what you're selling. So there's still a bit of maintenance, but the bit that's different is the information gain and the data sources that inform your collection of topics that sit on your website. So instead of keyword tools, you need to be informed by what it is your target buyers care about, because people are, it's not robots that are typing in, it's people that are typing in to into ChatGPT and AI. So you know technology follows people, therefore it makes sense to follow people, not tools.
Humans can relate to humans more.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
if you like, I like the fact that you brought up accessibility. So, are there any specific rules that you follow even when building SEO with AI that you think are imperative for people to keep in mind?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the obvious YCAG, WCAG accessibility guidelines. I think that goes without saying. Um, but in terms of when we talk in search, when we talk about search optimization, what we're really talking about is making sure your content is not hidden. So, there are hyperlinks around your website that ensure that there's a pretty high chance through random clicking on your website that the content you want seen in AI is, the probability of discovery is pretty high.
I think from a discoverability point of view, there is extreme competition. Everybody wants to be on the first page of everything. Everybody wants to be at the top of the list. Um, what would you say would be the best approach for people wanting to be within that list? Like, if you could give like top two tips.
I think the first thing is make sure your content is research grade. Okay. Now, the ways you could do that without having to build, uh, a mega ship like I have, a mega platform. The other way of doing that is by conducting uh, high confidence interval market research. So you can commission an agency like Gallup to run a minimum of 10 questions, and that will help you produce the data. And then obviously you need to get a data analyst to analyze that data, and before you can create the writing brief. So that would be my tip. And then the other tip is you need to be getting you need to tell the world, right? And when I mean by tell the world, I mean digital PR outreach. But digital PR outreach is not limited to journalists and bloggers like it has been for SEO. It also has to be in community discussion forums like Reddit, X, Threads, Blue Sky, that sort of thing. Yeah. So when you combine those things, and also I would add, if I could squeeze the third tip is, you know, you're doing your job right if you're creating content that people would, sections of your research grade report, if people would discuss it on LinkedIn, or assuming you're B2B, or TikTok or Instagram, if people would actually engage with it, then you've done something right. Like with SEO content, nobody would ever engage with it. Like, let's say you're selling disaster recovery. Nobody wants to engage with what is disaster recovery article, right? As we've seen from SEO for the last decade or so. And that's the difference between SEO content and GEO content. Is GEO content is for people, by people, and it's not about trying to trick AI. Yes, we are tricking AI, honestly, but we're also appealing to people, which is why AI likes it. So is it really a trick? Well, I would argue it's not, because if real people like it, i.e. your prospective buyers, for example, a CTO is never going, already knows what disaster recovery is, so they don't need to engage with an article on what is disaster recovery. Otherwise, they look at that and they would just go, oh, well, that's not for me. Whereas GEO content is coming up with insights that a CTO could learn from other CTOs that have engaged with disaster recovery companies.
If you could go back to the mad scientist days of 2019, what would be the one thing you tell yourself about trusting your own signals over the industry noise. Because right now, there are loads of founders who are still questioning if what they want to do is the right thing.
Yeah, so this is probably outside my formal expertise, but I know it sounds really weird, but one of the things I do is it's very easy to be ruled by your mind. So I would just go with, it's almost like you could ask yourself a question, and then instead of letting the mind go into like a spiral of all these kind of decision tree thoughts or a rabbit hole, I would just close your eyes, focus on your breathing, and then it's almost like you propose one idea, and then you see what kind of shows up in your body, and see if that, you know, does that create a lot of tension in the wrong way, the right way, and then you go through another, you propose another idea and see how that shows up in the body, and whatever feels right, because people forget that the brain was about the size of a pea when, since we've been on this earth for 2 million years. So the gut was probably our main control system for decision making. And of course, over millions of years, that has evolved where we now have the brain is the size it is now. So, yeah, probably not the answer you're expecting.
No, no, that's cool. It sounds to me like Geo for the soul.
Yeah. But what I would say is another thing is we all suffer from cognitive bias, right? Where we think something after lots of filtering, our mind is fed with an idea, and then what we tend to do is seek evidence to confirm that that is the right idea. I would actively seek to try and disprove the alternatives to see whether your original idea is still a good idea, if that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, like, you're really keen on this idea, but I would say, well, what are the alternatives? Can I find evidence either way to see if those alternatives are better or worse than my original idea? So by going through the pain of having to do the work and eliminate the alternatives, sometimes you can find yourself surprised that one of the alternatives that you're considering is actually better than your original idea, and it helps you. It helps you from. It could save you from making a mistake.
I can actually relate to that because I built a Google gem called Computer X-ray that when I have ideas and I know that other people are doing what I also want to do, I go and reverse engineer from where they started all of these strategic decisions that they've taken, where they are, reverse engineer the entire journey, business
Mm.
journey, and then I do that for multiple competitors. I go like, where do I stand here? And that's
I love
also
that.
how this podcast came about.
That's amazing. Well, clearly it works.
It's a very good gem, if I can say so.
Yeah.
And
No,
also
100%.
like from a SEO perspective, like it's the training documents that I gave it has, like, all of these guidelines. So anything that I'm I want to ask specifically, it has context to why I'm asking that, and the answers come accordingly. It's really cool.
That's Yeah, that is really cool. I'll take that if you don't mind.
Absolutely. No problem. Have you seen any one pattern of founders falling into most often with regards to SEO and AI? Like, when I say falling, I mean they're trying, but they're not really doing it right.
I think there's a few things behind that. First of all, they assume that everything they read online is true. Especially when it comes to best practices on GEO, and then they get disappointed when it doesn't quite work. What they don't quite realize is whatever you can do cheaply and easily, so can your competitors. So, I wouldn't understand why their expectations would be so huge. You know, I think the other thing is that there's this perception, like just like SEO was 25 years ago, that SEO is a trick. And yeah, I won't deny that there are some things that you might know that others don't know that could be defined as tricks, but it's not a trick. You know, just as AI is not magic, it uses data science. Well, you know, reliable, consistent, high performant GEO also is based on data science. So this is what I think a lot of founders don't appreciate. They just trivialize it because, you know, SEOs don't, or GEOs don't go to law school, or accounting, or train to be a banker. You know, so sometimes you know, consultants or solution providers can be overlooked. You know, whereas a lot of founders may have used to be ex-finance or worked in the law firm or ex-software engineer. You know, engineering. If you got an engineering degree, and you know that it can. I think when you come from such studied, erudite backgrounds, and you see that SEO or GEO doesn't have that kind of that doesn't have a similar background, they can often get overlooked and underestimated, and they underestimate the challenge of what it is they're trying to do.
If we look at, let's say, within your own work processes, can you share any of the AI tools or platforms that you use that makes life simpler for you?
Yeah, definitely. So although all of the technology that we use is proprietary and in-house to deliver our service, we still need to prove that it works. So we use Peak.ai to track visibility and performance. That ensures that, you know, we're not making it up and you really are visible, and you know, that helps provide a bit of measurability as well.
So there's one thing in our initial conversation that you had mentioned that I found absolutely fascinating, and that's you positioned a keynote speaker as the top futurist in just 2 months. So
Yes.
take us to the moment you looked at his existing data. What was the one thing he was doing specific to SEO that you told him he had to stop immediately?
Well, one of the things we stopped or put a stop to is SEO playbook guide content. So you know, this kind of what is you know, futurist speaker, that sort of thing, because your target audience, you know, they already know what a futurist speaker is. That's why they're searching for it. We're not looking to attract students who are not in the buying group and frankly wouldn't have the budget. So having explained our process, what we did was we produced a couple of guides. The first guide was on the general landscape of futurists, okay, and the second one was on recommending the best futurist speakers. And so it was the top of the funnel followed by the bottom of the funnel, and using our secret sauce, which is the data which teaches AI new things. That is what got AI to trust the data that we published on his website, and then by extension recommended him.
And what would have happened if this had not stopped? Or if I had to rephrase that, why was this a hard stop?
Well, they were trying for over a year, trying to achieve what we achieved in 2 months. So if they hadn't worked with us, they probably would never get there. But I really don't know, because I don't know what decisions they might take in the future. But if they carried on as they are, I couldn't see a way that they would. You know, it's like Einstein said: if you repeat, it's the definition of insanity is to repeat doing the same things and expect different results.
Let's look at the high stakes right now, right? So founders are rushing to use AI for SEO because they're afraid of being left behind. You said in our conversation that there is a right way and there's a wrong way. So, where is the first place smart founders usually get stuck or start creating decision that when they try to get that visibility in AI search?
I think the first false move is to try and do it yourself. I mean, you know, if I went to the dentist and started thinking that I could do my own teeth surgery, um, I think I would get unstuck pretty quickly. I think what they want to do is either hire people with a proven track record of doing it, um, or produce research grade reports and then promote it. But then by the time you get to a stage where you're doing all of that work, you'd have to question: are you in the AI search optimization business, or are you in the SaaS business that you originally founded?
For research, would you recommend Claude, Perplexity, or any other platform?
No, we definitely wouldn't recommend any AI. So this is what not to do. Okay, this is so if you're prompt engineering any of these AI platforms to produce research grade reports, that's what not to do. Why? Because any research you get from or AI outputs, research outputs you get from AI, are going to be noisy, distilled, summarized, and secondly, because it came from AI, how do you teach AI something new if AI fed that data to you? So that's how not to do it. The way to do it is to get new data with unseen insights that AI hasn't seen before. That is how you go about that is the way to do it, and that doesn't involve AI. That involves research.
So, we still need humans in the loop to be doing the research.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
If keywords are dead, what should founders be obsessing over to ensure that they get recommended on platforms like ChatGPT and Claude? Because any research you try and do on ChatGPT, especially, has now started giving recommendations with direct links to the websites. So, how can people actually get on that?
You get there by obsessing over what your buyers think and care about. If you obsess over that and you get the data behind that and you analyze it and publish it and then tell the world about it, that is how you're going to get into AI search. There's no shortcuts, I'm afraid.
See, my next question was going to be about a shortcut. Okay.
Sorry.
As a former accountant, where do you see the biggest invisible cost in how companies are currently deploying AI for the marketing?
So the invisible cost of is going to be brutal because if you're not pursuing it, then your competitors will. Unlike the internet of yesterday in the previous search era, where searching online literally built like highways to your website. In the new search era, it's almost like a closed shopping mall, and if your business gets recommended or cited, it's almost like this poster or billboard in the middle of the shopping mall, and you get your company name on there or your business name on there, and you just hope that the shoppers will remember to look you up either there and then on the way home or when they're at home. So the invisible cost is if you're not pursuing the GEO or AI search optimization, you're going to be left behind. And when you think about how agents are coming into the mainstream, which is known as agent-oriented optimization or AOO, for agents to execute on your prospective buyers' desires, such as find me 5 SaaS platforms that solve this problem. Well, if you're not AI visible, you're nowhere. You're not even in the shortlist. So, yeah, it really is the answer takes it all.
We often think AI is about speed, but what you've shown us today is it's actually about clarity with great research. What is the one thing when you started RTOs that has actually become your most valuable asset?
I think our data platform by far is our most valuable asset because we're able to produce research grade reports or the data for that research grade report at a fraction of the cost of what it would cost, a business founder to take up a survey with Gallup. I mean, that could easily, to produce the same volume and quality of insights that we produce, it would easily start approaching a five-figure sum.
Andreas, we've covered a lot of ground today, from building LLMs in the dark ages of 2019 to modern reality SEO, and there's more to just chasing keywords in today's world. What I'm taking away is that visibility isn't about volume, it's about the clarity of the signal that you are sending. This has been incredibly grounding conversation, and I'm sure our listeners will find the tips really helpful as well. So thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge with all of us. And for the people who are curious, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on our website, rtos.io. I'm also on LinkedIn. And if anybody wants to approach me directly, we've just recently published mini books on that go into a lot more detail about what we've discussed today. So please DM me.
It's been an absolute pleasure having a math scientist on the show who can actually make sense of the madness for the rest of us. Andreas, thank you for joining me on the AI Momentum podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Before the path hardens and before the choice is made, stopping decision death in this high stakes trade. Thank you for tuning in to the AI Momentum podcast. See you in the next episode.